So Eternals has become the first ever Ron movie in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's been since 2008. We've had 20 over 20 movies, and yet somehow this is the very first Ron movie with the 51%. So you're probably expecting me to give you the worst review. You're probably thinking it's going to be my worst rated MCU movie. You think I'm going to hate this movie. You probably think that this is the worst MCU movie. But I'm here to tell you without spoilers that this I'm not look, maybe it's cuz I'm left speechless. I just got out of the theater, but without a doubt, to me, and I might think differently. Maybe I need a few days to think about it, maybe weeks, months, maybe I need to rewatch it. But this is the single best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie of all time. To me, my subjective opinion, I know a lot of my fellow YouTubers will disagree because a lot of people that I know on YouTube have not liked the movie so far. I think it's the best MCU movie. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but I think this is the best MCU movie. Now, before I get into the video, I'll make sure to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bells. That way, you'll be notified for future content on your channel. My name is Isaac, and I'm the host of this multiverse of movies. And again, we're going to not spoil Internal, so make sure you stay tuned for a review. Also, comment down below after the video. Are you expecting to like this movie, not like it, whatever it is? Please let us know down in the comment section down below. Or if you've seen it, you just tell us what you think about it. But anyways, buy some merchandise. Also, we got merchandise on sale right now on the channel, so go and check it out. But anyways, let's talk about Eternals. Now, Eternals is a film made by Chloe Zhao, and we've seen a lot of the critics not like it. It's 51% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's insanely low for a MCU movie, and there's been over 200 reviews. I actually even ended up getting this bucket of Eternals. I didn't even expect. When I saw the trailers, I will be honest, I wasn't that excited. And the only reason why I was excited for this movie was because of Chloe Zhao, because she is the defending best picture and best director in the Oscars. So to me, that's what was leading. That's what caused me to want to keep watching this movie. And what the trailers didn't excite me, I still was looking forward to it because I kept hearing everyone say this is a different MCU movie. Now, let me tell you if I agree or disagree. Now, I disagree that this movie does not feel like an MCU movie at all. I'll admit there are a lot of moments in this movie where you're there like, yeah, this is MCU, especially the references to other MCU characters. But if I was going to talk about is it the most distinct MCU movie? Yes. If you're someone who's done with the Marvel formula, I'll tell you this right now. This movie is not the Marvel formula. Yes, there's a couple of things about it that are Marvel formulatic, but the movie as a whole is just this beautiful, powerful, enriching film about humanity of, as human beings, we're terrible, we're horrible. You see the worst of human beings, and yet we are still good. There's still good in us. There's love and empathy, and this movie challenges the ideals of should godlike beings even care about us human beings, because this movie really challenges you with that idea. These gods, they come to our world and they look at us and they're like some of the Eternals, they're like, no, human beings are terrible, they're awful, they're these despicable beings. And this movie even emphasizes that by showing you some of the worst stuff that's gone on in human history. There's this specific scene. It's my favorite scene in the movie. I'm not gonna say what it is, but you see this very, very bad moment in human history, and you have Photon, or what's his name, Fatos, something like that. It's the black gay guy. You have him kind of crying. Not gonna say what he says, but in that scene, it's the worst he's seen from humanity, and he helped. He helped, and I love how this movie challenges you with those morals, because the reality is there are moments in this movie where I'm thinking to myself, no, the Eternals should not be saving the heroes. I mean, should not be saving the human beings. Human race as a whole has just been terrible, and each character has this dilemma of what is, should we even be here? Because this movie does challenge you as to what it means to be human. And I love how this movie has that. And I love it when movies challenge your morals. And MCU doesn't really ever challenge me on that. My favorite MCU movies are Thor Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, Homecoming, Shang-Chi. A lot of these movies I love, but they never really challenge you in your ideology. And I love how this movie did that. And this new phase of the MCU, let me just say this right now. Everyone was criticizing how it doesn't seem fun, or it doesn't seem like, what can you do after Endgame? Let me tell you, watching WandaVision, watching Loki, watching Shang-Chi and now watching Eternals, I genuinely think that this new phase is now the time to test. Shang-Chi felt different. WandaVision was unique. Loki was unique. But Eternals is the cherry on top. And first, let me say who is my favorite character in this movie. My favorite character is Cersei, played by the wonderful Gemma Chan. Now, I'm not really the biggest Gemma Chan fan, but watching her in this movie was definitely such a pleasant surprise. Her character is the good of humanity. You see the good in her. You see her as weak and vulnerable, but at the end of the day, she's good, and she's the one who is practically the main character. Now, there's also other great characters. Richard Madden played a great Icarus. Kit Harington played good, well as Black Knight. Oh, he's not Black Knight yet in this movie. If you're related, if you're familiar with the comics, you would know that he eventually becomes Black Knight. But Salma Hayek as Ajax was great. She was kind of like the mentor, the leader of the Eternals. Gigamesh, I'm not sure what the actor's name is, but he was great, and I loved his relationship with Thena in this movie. Angelina Jolie was actually pretty good in this movie. Kamali Nanjiani is great as Kingo. I think everyone in this movie was great, but particularly I think Gemma Chan and Richard Madden both are the best because this movie is a love movie. This is a small detail. This is a very, very small detail. In fact, if I was to say this detail right now, you would not care while watching the movie. But I'm just gonna say it's technically a spoiler, but it's not. But it's the first MCU sex scene. Yes, there is a sex scene in this movie. The MCU has not had one up until now, and it fit perfectly because Cersei and Icarus have this romance from beginning to end of the film that is complex. It's not this straightforward, just attractive woman and attractive guy both fall in love in there. No, this movie has complex feelings, and I love that about Chloe Zhao. I've not seen a lot of Chloe Zhao's work, but I did watch Nomadland. Nomadland was a beautiful film. So Eternals genuinely felt like a Chloe Zhao film. It did not feel like a Kevin Feige movie. It felt unique. It felt enriched. It felt like something you wouldn't see in the Marvel universe, and I love that because the movie is also it's challenging the stakes. This movie is the MCU movie with the highest stakes because the faith of humanity, the human race as a whole, is in danger, and the Eternals are there. Arishem the judge was, I mean, I don't know who voiced him, but every scene he was there, he felt imposing. He felt like a true, like, fear, a threat. And I love the stakes of the movie. Now, the Deviants. The trailers and all the promotion to the movie was about the Deviants being the bad guys. Let me tell you this right now. If you're excited for the Deviants, you're probably not... Like, this is the only small nitpick I have, but it's not really a nitpick. The Deviants really weren't in the movie. Now, I'm not going to say what happens, but the Deviants were practically nothing in this movie. They were just kind of there to be the punching bags for the Eternals. And while the movie hypes up a lot the Deviants, I'll admit to you this right now: the Deviants are not a big part of this film. They're there, but they're not like this massive thing that the trailers were promising. But I did like the Deviants. I think the CGI was pretty cool. The action was not really the best. I've seen better action in MCU movies, but this whole movie was just so enriched and so wonderful and so magnificent that I remember leaving that theater, I was speechless. And very few movies in my life ever leave me speechless because this movie, I know I keep referring to this again, but this movie challenges you with the ideology. It challenges you with your thoughts. It challenges you with, should the human race exist? And I think it's perfect how Arishem is saying that this world isn't perfect, and each character embodies a flaw in humanity. Or Cersei's kind of naive, Icarus is fearful, Ajax is she's complex, Athena she has her issues, Kingo lives within the humans. But Sprite, I love the character of Sprite was very annoying throughout some parts of the movie. She's like the only negative I had, but there's a story to her character of her of her not ever feeling human, while the other characters have their own human complex feelings. And that's something I like about the Eternals. The Eternals are complex. The Eternals are not just these bland, straightforward characters. And I love how the characters all have their own issues. They're all living among, because in this movie the Eternals kind of split their ways and live amongst the human race as if they're part of it, and you learn about what they're doing. Some of them love the human race, the other some of them don't, and I love that there's division within the Eternals. The Eternals never feels like an Avengers or a Guardians of the Galaxy. They feel like the Eternals always feels like they're different. They're special in a certain way because they have to be together, but it feels different in its own unique way of storytelling. It's not like Guardians and Avengers where at the end they have to team up and fight the big bad guy. That's not what Eternals is. And a lot of people, this is the biggest criticism I see, but it's one of the things I praise most. This movie does not have a lot of action. Yes, there's action in the movie, but there's not a lot of it. And I'm fine with that because this movie felt better without the action. This movie is more about the characters. I do think this is more of a character story rather than a plot driven story. And I love that about the film. The film, I love how slow it is. And look, we recently just watched Dune. I like Dune, but one of my biggest criticisms from Dune was that it was too slow. And Denis Villeneuve should have cut that movie to like 20 minutes shorter, to me personally. But Eternals did not have that. To me, the pacing in Eternals, it was slow, but it was done properly. Some movies require a slow pace, and some movies require a quick pace. And this film clearly needed that slow pace. It needed you to relax, learn about the characters and understand them. And I hear a lot of people saying that the character development's not good for the characters. I think that for the most part, a lot of these characters, even the ones who have very little development, what I love is that they show you their flaws and it shows you their humanity. Because even these godlike beings, or practically actual literal gods, even they feel humanity. They feel fear. They're cowards. They cry. They're happy. They're angry. And this movie really, from beginning to end, challenges you on those ideas of humanity. Because humans, again, have done terrible things in the past. I mean, look at our entire human history. Look how many genocides and wars there have been. And this movie really challenges you with that idea. And that's why, as of now, as it stands, now my opinion can change, I genuinely think Eternals is the best Marvel Cinematic Universe film of all time. I think it's better than Guardians of the Galaxy, and I did not ever think any MCU movie could ever top Guardians of the Galaxy. You guys know how much I love Guardians of the Galaxy. To me, Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I think it's the best MCU movie of all time, but I genuinely think Eternals is there. And Kevin Feige was talking about Oscars for this movie. I genuinely think that Eternals, as it stands, is probably my favorite movie of the year. Besides Zack Snyder's Justice League, because that's my favorite movie of all time. But if we're talking about Quiet Place Part 2, Green Knight, Nomadland was last year, my bad. But with all these movies that have come out this year, No Time to Die, all these movies, I genuinely think that as of now, as it stands, now I could be wrong about this, but as it stands, I do think that this movie deserves an Oscar nomination. And even Guardians of the Galaxy, even a lot of my favorite comic book movies like Batman vs Superman, um, James Gunn Suicide Squad. By the way, let me say this. I didn't expect to say this, but I think Eternals is a better movie than James Gunn Suicide Squad. And that's a comfort movie to me. You guys know how much I love that movie. It's my number one comfort movie. I mean, I even got a Blu-ray over there of Suicide Squad. And I think it's better than Shang-Chi 2. Eternals is more than likely in my top five best comic book movies of all time, and for a reason. And if this movie is to be nominated or to even win an Oscar for Best Picture, I'm all in. I'm right here. You have my vote. That The Eternals is the best movie of the year. I mean, theatrically, because Zack Snyder's Justice League came streaming. So I'm not even going to count that for this year because I do think that's a more 2017 movie. But I love this movie, and you guys have no idea how much I loved it. I've never cried in an MCU movie, but there was a couple of scenes in this movie that almost broke me down. It's including my favorite scene where you see Phantos or I don't remember his name, but he's the gay black guy. In the scene, I'm not gonna say what happens or what's going on, but you'll notice, for the people who haven't seen the movie yet, you'll understand when you watch it. But in the movie, they show his character crying, and he's with Salma Hayek's Ajax, and it's like at that moment he sees the worst in humanity and he feels saddened. That to me was a very powerful scene to me. It's I've never cried in an MCU movie, but there were moments in this movie that got me close to that level of tearing up. Are there any negatives to this movie? To me personally, I didn't feel any of the negatives. I remember just leaving the theater speechless. Now again, this is my out of theater reaction. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in the next week, maybe Eternals will not be in my favorite MCU movie of all time category, but I'd have to think about it. And I'm probably gonna do an MCU ranking just to clarify where my MCU movies stand. But this movie is a cinematic masterpiece. Now let me talk about what do I think other people are going to think, because I've gone 14, 15 minutes of me just talking about what I loved. And now this is probably one of the worst reviews I've ever done, because I'm not clarifying things specifically, because I'm just that speechless. But let me talk about how do I think people are going to react. I think there's going to be a lot of people out there, including you guys, that will not like this movie because this movie is more complex. It's not, I don't think the average MCU fan will enjoy this movie. In fact, I think this, by most MCU fans are going to see this movie as a bump in the road. They're going to see it as a boring movie. And this is probably going to be the one franchise in the MCU that they don't like. And that's what I believe. Now, I could be wrong. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I do think that because the MCU is not used to a movie like Eternals, I don't think that MCU fans are going to like it. Shang-Chi, even though Shang-Chi to me is very unique in its own ways, that movie feels still similar to the MCU, but this movie does in many ways feel different from the typical average MCU movie. This is not just a fun, punchy uh, joke movie. Yes, there are moments where it does feel like an MCU movie, but for the most part, the movie as a whole feels different and unique in a good way. There's not a lot of action scenes, so that's probably a big no to people who love MCU action. There's not a lot of comedy scenes. I mean, there is comedy scenes. There is Kingo, Kamali Najamali. He was great in it. Even the characters like Cersei, Icarus, they have their little jokes. There's even a DC reference in this movie, which you guys have probably already seen because it was in a commercial. But there isn't a lot of it from like your typical MCU movie. And I love that Kevin Feige is going different. I love that Kevin Feige is is now learning that the new phase of MCU should not just be plain generic, plain generic, plain generic, because that's what Black Widow to me was. To me, Black Widow was just generic, but Eternals felt unique in all the best way possible. And this movie left me in a position that I didn't think that I would ever be in, and that would be challenging on which is my favorite MCU movie. I think it's Eternals, but Guardians of the Galaxy, you guys know how much I love that movie. I have a deep love for that movie. Um, I don't think this movie is as good as Batman vs Superman or Spider-Man 2, no Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I'd have to think about it. I think it might be in my top five favorite MCU, top five favorite comic book movies of all time. It's definitely in my consideration for Best Picture of the year. Um, but Chloe Zhao, man, round of applause. Maybe it sounds like, because I am saying I am stuttering a lot in my review today, and I should have done this tomorrow morning, but I was just left that speechless that I just had to get on here, turn on the microphone, turn on the camera tonight, and tell you guys how much I love this movie. You guys have no idea how my mind is feeling right now. Where I never in my life did I think that Guardians of the Galaxy would be topped by any MCU movie. Um, and that's really tough to me. That's something I was not expecting for quite a long time. Um, I've heard a lot of people also say that this is Kevin Feige's attempt at doing a Zack Snyder movie. This movie does not feel Zack Snyder like. Like, if I was to not know who directed this movie, I would not think it's Zack Snyder. But I would say it's the closest MCU movie to being Zack Snyder style like. In this movie, they did have moments that felt like Man of Steel like moments or Batman vs Superman moments, where there's scenes where you're challenged as to should humanity even be saved. And really, the best way I can sum up my thoughts on this movie is this is a beautiful, enriching movie about human history, and how even though there's a lot of bad in human history, there is still that light of hope of humanity being good, being passionate, being loving and caring. There are still moments in humanity like that, and I love that this movie goes into that it challenges you with the idea. Because again, I said this early in the review, there are moments in this movie where I'm like, the human race should not deserves not to be saved, but there are moments where I'm like, dude, it should be saved. Um, maybe I'm gonna have to do a second review because this movie's very well, it's not like insanely complex like a movie like Inception, but it is complex to where I don't even know how much I love this. I love this movie definitely, and I know a lot of people were turned off from this movie because the trailers to me were not that good. I'll say this right now: the trailers did not do this movie justice, but I do think it all depends on your subjective preference. Some people like slow-paced movies about characters being challenged to their morals. Other people like more fun action, comedies. It's all subjective. So if you don't like this movie, that's fine. That's completely fine. It's just my personal opinion. I just think this movie is so wonderful and so unique in all the good ways possible. And I'm probably going to make another video because on this channel, we've been talking a lot about how critics are not liking this movie. Again, it's a 51% Rotten Tomatoes. It's the first Marvel movie to go Ron in to do a Ron score from critics. I know a lot of people don't trust critics. I've always said this: critics are just fans like us who give their own opinion. So please do not attack critics, even if you love this movie. And while I disagree with the 49% of critics who didn't like this movie, I still I still I still appreciate I understand a lot why people don't wouldn't like this movie. I know I'm gonna get some people. I mean, I already had, because I did my early reaction on Twitter, which is why you should follow me on Twitter at Isaac the Film Geek. But I do think, I mean, I already had messages, people telling me, really, you think it's your best MCU movie? And I'll tell you this, I genuinely think it is, and I'm probably gonna have to make another video. I'm gonna have to rewatch this movie in theaters again. Uh, Mainly because I'm just left that speechless. I love this movie. I love it so much to a point where I just was not expecting it. There are so many scenes in this movie because I do this often. I'll go on YouTube and search up clips of movies. I do this often, but I think I'm going to do that with Eternals when it comes out on YouTube clips or something like that. Definitely going to buy it on Blu-ray when it comes out. Um, I don't know what to say. I'm genuine about that. I do not know. Stay tuned for another video, but this is just such a beautiful film. It's enriching and powerful, and you know, I don't even know how to clarify my review so much, but I'm probably gonna have to do a rewatch of this movie. Um, Not because this movie isn't understandable. This movie was easy to. I think it was easy to digest about what's going on, what the characters are doing. I think it's not like Tenet or Inception. It's obviously not that. When I say complex, I mean complex as to a storytelling way where the characters are complex, everyone's complex, and I love complex characters because human beings are complex. And really, this movie is about the human race. Now, last thing I'm gonna say is the commercials and trailers have been saying that this movie is gonna change the fate of the MCU. I'll agree but disagree with that. This movie, like, let's say you were to skip this movie and go into No Way Home, it doesn't matter. This movie doesn't have that big idea of what the changing the MCU, but there are things to learn about the MCU's bigger picture in this movie, because I do think that this movie will help you understand more of the MCU, but I do think this movie is more about human beings as a whole. You know, it also challenges the God idea, the idea of a God. Like, why is there this powerful being why are there these powerful beings who are so powerful but yet do nothing about it? And there's always been this debate between atheists and Christians. And look, I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't believe religious wise, but I do love how this movie really also challenges the idea of a God. If there was a God, why are the bad things happening? Why aren't they letting the Eternals interfere with human life? And I do love the idea. A lot of people were complaining about, if the Eternals are there to protect the universe, why weren't they there for Thanos? And I love how this movie also challenges that idea of, again, should human beings even be saved? Because, as human beings, the way we learn is from learning from our mistakes. I mean, remember a couple of years ago, like a decade ago, you were allowed to say racist, homophobic, transphobic things all over the place, and nothing would happen. Rape is still a big thing in culture. There's murders that happen often. So human beings are flawed, but throughout the years we start learning. I mean, nowadays even this movie proved that, you know, being gay isn't a bad thing. It's an open thing. And, transgenders, the whole topic, racism has become less and less approved throughout the years. And I love how this movie also kind of teaches you that, where it's like, yes, we are flawed and yes, we are terrible, but part of that is learning and how human beings keep evolving throughout the times. And just one last thing to clarify, this movie does have a gay couple and they do kiss in one scene. If you're someone who's offended by that, get the F out. If a couple kissing offends you, doesn't matter what your religious, whatever background you're in. I know a lot of nerds, these fat virgin nerds on like their mom's basements, like Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, or Jeremy from Quartering. I know a lot of these people are going to complain about how this movie's virtue signaling and has a political agenda, SJW. This movie does not have that. It doesn't have that. Yes, there's a gay couple. Yes, there's black characters. Yes, there's female characters. A female stars in this movie, so that might offend a lot of people because sadly there's still a bunch of idiots in this world. But this movie does have a message about, yes, we are terrible. Yes, we are horrible. But at the end of the day, as human beings, we learn from those flaws and we learn from mistakes. I'll personally go from my own experience. I'm not a perfect person. I'm nowhere near perfect, and I will never be near perfect. I'm flawed. I've made mistakes. On this channel, I've made mistakes. I'm not, you could even say I'm not a good person. But at the end of the day, I learn from them and I try to be the best way I can. And maybe I'll never get to that aspect. And I don't think I'm a good person. That's not up to me to decide. But what is up to me to decide is to be the best version of myself, learn from my mistakes, and learn from things. Like, for example, let's be honest, this review is not a very good professional review. This review is 26 minutes so far. Reviews should really just be 10 minutes and quick to the point. And even though I wrote a lot of notes for my videos, that's why I keep looking there, I still cannot tell you what my thoughts on this movie really are. But, I can tell you my thoughts, but I can't tell you my complete 100% thoughts because this movie left me speechless. And I do think it is the best movie in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Better than Endgame, better than Infinity War, better than the 2012 Avengers. A lot of people are not going to agree with me. I can guarantee you that in my spoiler discussion, most people are not going to agree with me. But I'm not here to agree, or I'm not here to suck up to people. I'm not here to lie about my opinions. But my opinion is Chloe Zhao just made the best MCU movie ever made. And I'm all in for it.